Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi here. Welcome to MST.TV. So without a doubt, Maximum Gold is one of the greatest reprint sets to ever be released in the entire history of Yu-Gi-Oh!, bringing so many important reprints to really meta-relevant cards. However, despite this, I feel like there are a ton of things that should have been included in the set that simply were not. Maximum Gold was supposed to be the set that reprinted some important cards that were not included in Duel Overload or Battles of Legend Armageddon from earlier this year, and we have no major reprint set coming up until the Dual Power style set that we usually get in the spring. Now, I don't know if maybe Konami has some plans for some of these other cards, but there were some definite misses here that could have made Maximum Gold an even better set than it already is. So today we're breaking down the top 10 cards, in my opinion, that are missing from the set and should have been reprinted in Maximum Gold. Let's get started. Kicking things off at number 10, we have Psyframe Lord Lambda. Now, Lambda is a card that just barely made it onto the list for me, but is definitely something that I think should have been included in Maximum Gold. This is a generic Link 2 monster whose primary function is that it allows you to activate the effects of Psyframe monsters while you control monsters, which is really cool. Now, to be fair, this isn't something that a ton of people are playing. I think that when you think of Link 2 monsters, you're thinking Halki Fibrax, IP Masquerena, maybe a Nightmare Phoenix or something like that. However, I do think that Lambda would have been a nice inclusion in the set, given how many people are running Psyframe Gear Gamma in their main decks at the moment. Gamma has become arguably the most impactful hand trap in the game, right up there with Nibiru and Infinite Impermanence. I haven't seen Lambda made or even being run in the extra deck too often, but I do think it's a really cool option that people should have available, since it makes the hand trap live even when you have an established field. With only one printing that is about a year and a half old, it would have been nice to see a reprint of Lambda in order to bring its price back down into the lower single digits. At number 9, we have Generator Boss Stage. Now, to be fair, I do think that Generators were more hyped up than they should have been in the past. People were talking about them maybe being a tier 2 deck or so, but we haven't seen the deck do a single thing since they got their new support. However, I do feel like Generators actually do have some potential as an engine rather than a pure strategy, because basically everything flows through the usage of their field spell card, and it can be fairly compact. Anyways, even though it is an irrelevant card in the meta today, Boss Stage is still up at the $10 mark. Now, this isn't a horrible price, but having to pick it up at $3 along with whatever other couple of cards you need in order to play the engine is a little bit much for an unproven engine that you're just wanting to play around with and test out. Honestly, I feel like it's not so much that the price is super high, but rather I feel like it's annoying to go out and find and pick up the card as well. Even if you can find someone who has the card, they maybe aren't willing to move it at its current market price because of the hype that it saw before and its potential to increase in price in the future. Anyways, the Dragon Maids were also included in the Mystic Fighters set, and they were just reprinted in Maximum Gold, so with Generators being the more potentially meta-viable option from the set, I was definitely expecting Boss Stage and some of the other Generator cards to be reprinted in Maximum Gold as well. Number 8, this one should have been fairly easy to see coming. It is Zodiac Thoroughblade. I feel like I end up seeing something about Zodiacs every single day because they've gone from being a tier 0 strategy to being completely obsolete to once again contending for tier 1 status. They just got 2 new big toys in Zoo King Alpha and Double A Zeus, so we've seen a ton of hype for a lot of Zodiac cards over the last little while. Chakanine was the card getting the most hype, but with both Chakanine and Trident being reprinted in Maximum Gold, Thoroughblade is the last piece of the deck that is somewhat difficult to find. It's sitting at just over $10 for either of its 2 ultra rare printings, but I feel like the card is really hard to find because there's so many people that are interested in building the deck, so the quantities just get eaten off of the market fairly quickly. With the reprints to Chakanine and Trident in Maximum Gold, I definitely think that it would have been a great time to reprint Thoroughblade as well, but for now we're going to have to cross our fingers and hope that it gets a common print in something like the next OTS tournament pack. On to number 7, let's take a look at Evilzord Dilca. Dinosaurs have definitely been one of the best decks of the year 2020, and they're actually a really cool strategy. You can get most of the cards straight out of the structure deck, so it's really easy and affordable to build, and the deck can either OTK out of nowhere or set up some really decent boards with a few interruptions. Now, admittedly, the extra deck isn't something that they will go into too often, but one of the main extra deck options that they will use is Evilzord Dilca as a rank 4 option that can provide multiple monster effect negations. Now the deck does typically use Pot of Extravagance, so Dilca is typically run at 2, so as to mitigate the chances of you banishing both copies off of a single Extravagance. However, outside of Archosaur, Dilca is one of the few pieces of the Dino deck that is a bit more expensive and harder to find, with even the 10 reprints being over $10 each. The thing I have to look at here as well is that I would expect Dinos to get hit on an upcoming ban list because the deck has been at least somewhat meta relevant for the last couple of years or so, and they'll want to phase in some new meta strategies. That being said, it would have made sense to reprint Dilca and make it more accessible before the deck gets hit and Dilca consequently tanks in price. With a deck that is already so accessible to so much of the player base, a reprint of a card like this could have really helped out those budget players to round out their extra decks. At number 6, a reprint that really is like a year overdue, we have Orchestrated Return. So obviously here in the TCG, Orchest isn't really a relevant deck and hasn't been since we saw Harp Horror banned. However, I know that a lot of people were trying to hype up Orchest back on the release of Eternity Code, saying that Girsu was the card that was going to help push the deck over the top and make it meta relevant once again. We have seen Orchestrated Return fluctuate a lot in price over the last year or so, with people trying to hype up Orchest at various points. Honestly, at this point, it may be too late and maybe all of the hype for Orchest has finally died off. Return is actually down at the $10 mark for now, whereas we've seen it pretty consistently between $15 and $20 for the better part of 2020. We definitely should get a reprint of Return because maybe if we see a format shift with an upcoming ban list, Orchest could potentially do something. Either way, it would have been nice to see it in Maximum Gold since it's relatively close to when Girsu came out, though at this point we might not see it until closer to Girsu's Megaton reprint. We're in the top 5 now, and I have Prank Kid's place here. This is obviously the Prank Kid's field spell card, which is doubly useful because not only does it search for a Prank Kid's card on activation, but it also enables you to chain block your effects when you fusion or link summon. A really good card, and Prank Kids just got a new Link 1 monster in Meow Meow in Phantom Rage. Honestly, Maximum Gold would have been the ideal place to reprint this card because the two products line up so closely to one another. At any rate, this card did come out way back in Hidden Summoners, a side set that came out 2 years ago, and it was short printed, so this is quite a difficult 3 of to find if you're wanting to play the Prank Kids deck. Unfortunately, if you're wanting to go that route, this means that you're going to be stuck looking at dropping $20 a piece for copies of the field spell. Okay, so maybe it's just me who's a little bit annoyed by this. I don't care, I'm putting Elemental Hero Airneos on the list. Neo Space Connector came out like 2 years ago, and that's about when people started hyping up Airneos, and we started even seeing Ultra Rare Airneos at over the $100 mark. Really, the Neospatian deck has never been good or meta relevant, but it has always been something that people could try maybe playing around with for fun at locals or something like that. Despite this, apparently Konami is dead set against reprinting Airneos ever. We've literally seen every single other hero fusion get reprinted. Even Shining Flare Wingman was reprinted really randomly in Battles of Legend Armageddon, but we still don't have that Airneos reprint. You would think that in a set with 160 slots like Maximum Gold, they would have finally found a time to reprint it, but apparently not. This card is going to continue to stick in videos like this until Airneos gets the reprint it deserves. Alright, so we're on to the top 3, and this is where maybe I'm a little bit more irritated by these cards being excluded from Maximum Gold than I should be. Now, number 3 here is Evenly Matched, which I'm sure you guys all know about by now. This card maybe isn't as much of a side deck staple now as it has been in formats in the past, but the card is still a very strong side deck option that is likely to continue to rotate in and out of people's decks depending on the format. Now, this card does have 2 reprints, a secret rare and ultra rare reprint, but despite this, the card still sits at over $15 a piece for the lowest rarity version. Now, that in and of itself is okay, but this card was actually due to get a reprint in the Charmer structure deck, which would have made the card 1,000 times more accessible for everyone. However, Konami decided not to include it in there, which I guess we should have seen coming. We've seen them do similar things in the past. The part that really threw me off was when they decided not to include it in Maximum Gold as well, despite the product coming out at roughly the same time. Because of how strong Evenly Matched is, and because of how necessary it can be to deal with certain boards, I feel like it's a card that everyone should have access to, which just isn't true when the card's lowest rarity version costs between $15 to $20. I'm honestly pretty disappointed in this one, and I feel like if we couldn't have gotten that reprint in the structure deck as a common, we should have at least seen it reprinted in Maximum Gold. At number 2, we have Buster Dragon. Now, the Buster Blader engine is something that has been picking up a lot of traction recently, as the lock that you can set up by using Buster Dragon and the Buster Blader fusion is really difficult for certain decks to deal with, and the whole thing requires relatively minimal setup. I actually really like the Buster Blader engine because it's compact enough that you can combine it with other engines like the Eldritch or the Dogmatica, and it's a control deck that's actually viable in a format full of combo decks with things like Dragon Link and Infernoble Knights. Now anyways, Buster Dragon only has one printing from way back in Breakers of Shadows, which came out back in January of 2016. That's right, in a couple of months, this card will be 5 years old and still has never had a reprint, which is pretty ridiculous to me. The thing that confuses me so much is that Konami actually decided to include the Buster Blader fusion monster in Maximum Gold, so either that was a completely random choice, or they really do know that Buster Blader cards are viable. At any rate, I think Buster Dragon is a card that should have been reprinted as a way to promote another deck in the format that is a bit of a change of pace and gameplay from the other decks. I don't know if Buster Blader will still necessarily be a viable engine in the next upcoming formats, but reprinting Buster Dragon to make the complete engine more accessible would have been a great way to promote some diversity and experimentation. Alright, and my number 1 spot here is going to go to none other than Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Chaos. Now this is a Link 3 monster that came out about a year and a half ago in Battles of Legend Heroes Revenge, and even though it was pretty cheap on its initial release, it jumped up really high in price almost right away, as the card was not only short printed, but it was extremely useful against Sky Strikers, which at the time were one of the best decks of the format. Now, since Engage got banned and Sky Strikers fell out of the meta, the card hasn't seen a ton of use. It's still a strong card that some people will use here and there if they have the space available in their extra deck, but it's very far from a staple. However, even though it's seeing minimal play, its price still sits at well over the $70 mark, which is kind of insane to be honest. I could understand this card maybe seeing a price tag like that if it were a staple part of the meta where everyone was running it in their extra deck, but as just a niche one of for some decks, there is no way that this card should be that expensive. On top of that, we've already seen reprints of other cards from the same set, such as Almirage. It's not like the card is brand new or anything, it's been out for a year and a half. But yeah, overall, I just think that BLS Soldier of Chaos should not be this crazy overpriced card that it is now because of its such niche usage, and Maximum Gold would have been the perfect place to reprint this card to make it more accessible for everyone and drive the price down to a reasonable amount. Alright guys, that is it for today's episode. I personally am super excited for Maximum Gold. I think some friends and I are all going to be going down to locals later today to pick up some packs, so that should be really fun. You know, there are some cards that admittedly probably should have been included in the set, but nevertheless, it's an amazing set with so many great reprints, and the new gold rare technology just looks so beautiful. I honestly think this is going to go down as the best product of the year 2020, and arguably one of the coolest products in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! History. Anyways guys, if you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to hit that thumbs up button for me. Also, let me know in the comment section down below what reprints from Maximum Gold you guys were really happy to see and what cards you wish were included in the set that happened to have been excluded. Also, if you guys haven't already, make sure that you hit the subscribe button to get all of the latest content from both Tombox and myself here on the channel. And until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.